And welcome back. A few weeks ago, I was able to sit down with Carolyn Woolsey of Lake Charles. Carolyn sits on many different boards and planning commissions. She's really an amazing person that has a lot of great information. I'm hoping that you enjoy this interview as much as I did.
Right. I'm Carolyn Woosley, and I'm a Lake Charles native. I lived in California for a couple of decades and moved back to work on things here. I'm a retired certified financial planner and stockbroker, and I'm currently a playwright and a community activist, head of the public radio effort, former head of the Downtown Development Authority, Team Green, which is our recycling effort here in the area, and heading up a strong effort to rejuvenate our local Campfire USA chapter and the camp Weetah Winton for kids who cannot afford, in particular, to go to very wealthy camps. And I think it's a huge resource for the region, and Lafayette is in our district. We're looking forward to reestablishing ties in Lafayette for the youth and the families of that area as well. It's very exciting because we're set in an area that represents the lowland, the hardwoods that are the upper reaches of the ecosystem of our coast, which is one of the things I definitely want to talk about today, our coast.
Great.
But those are things I work on.
If someone in Lafayette is interested in that group, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, they would call the Campfire office here in Lake Charles, which is listed, Campfire USA.
Great.
We are already talking with New York Life. They're interested in having a group over there. But we have tremendous outreach that will be restarted. That often happens with 90-year-old organizations. You go through ebbs and flows. And maybe that's what the Democratic Party, has to go through too.
You're absolutely right.
So, I'm very interested in our party. Just to jump right into my comments.
Right.
In terms of tone, I think the Democratic Party is really, really under the gun to establish a tone which is statesmanlike. I think that the Sandlot finger-pointing days are over. It's great fun. It's a sport. But boys state mentality is really a thing of the past. It does not resonate with voters. It tires voters. It cultivates cynicism. And it does not speak to people who wish to govern. And so I do think that pointing fingers in a day in particular when the overall governing the membership and who will govern our state is changing radically. We're at a point of historic change, I think. And people who think historically need to see that when tacks need to be taken in sailing, you take the tack. You don't fight against the wind. You cannot sail otherwise. And the us versus them tone of the rich hate us, the Republicans hate us, simply does not resonate with most voters. We are a disparate type. Over here, there are many people of great wealth, of significant wealth, who are Democrats. And to simply stereotype us as other groups, socially and culturally are often stereotyped, is simply not productive. Because there are many wealthy, starting with the Roosevelts, the Kennedys, and others, who are quite capable of asking, where is the working man and woman? What are the rights? Where is fairness in the workplace? What about public education? What about access to health care? We're all in this together, and we need to adopt a tone that is encompassing, that identifies points of commonality for the Democratic Party members. And to say us versus them is, I think, a definite strain and a different part of our party, and well recognized and has a time-honored place in history. But at this point in history, we need to bring us together. We need to raise our tone and raise money. And you don't do that by alienating significant minorities. No, the American dream is to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I'm one of those families. I'm not from a poor family. I was from a poor family several generations ago. But all you need to do is make a little money, have children, and those children can no longer say they're from a poor family. So then do they forfeit the right to be Democrats? Do they forfeit the right to ask valid questions? I don't think so. And when you realize that small business is the engine of our economy, we're simply not being good socioeconomic critics. 2/3 of our nation's economy is small business. So How is the small business faring? How is the small businessman faring in an era of globalization? You also cannot deny that globalization is occurring. It's been occurring since the late 70s, mid 80s. Should we slow against the trend? No. The unions should say, what is our current competition and what is our current, what tools should we employ? Well, we should retool. We should retool for new economies. People who are truly into energy, just as our part of the state is, and my great-grandfather was, would say not, oh, I must hold on to the buggy, even though the automobile has been invented. No, they should say, what is happening with transportation? Where should we position ourselves? How can we retool ourselves? What widgets can we make for the new economy? How can we get ahead of the game? And so we must ask the right questions. What are the benefits adequate? Are we in on the very significant dialogue which is happening within our state right now on health care? I am a health insurance agent. I just attended the state annual health care convention. I heard the department's head. I heard the head of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana. You would think that you were in a country that practiced socialism. We are in the midst of significant discussions on universalization of health care, and the Democratic Party should be at the head of that conversation, and they should be acting on both sides, asking hard questions. We should be telling people that we are, meanwhile, but 200% behind our governor's efforts to bring every child that qualifies into LA CHIP, which is the Child's Health Insurance Program, which was a rather revolutionary program invented in the Clinton years, quietly in all 50 states. And we should be in those conversations, and we cannot be whispering about things like this. To have brought it in discreetly and quietly, as the Clinton administration did, was most intelligent. But to be quiet now is most unintelligent, because quality of life is an issue that the Democratic Party should be fighting for. And as Walmart and the unions, the SEIU, said yesterday in their statement, as they join forces, the healthcare costs are breaking the back of corporate America. And so then to be defunding this is to be going against everything which, frankly, is in favor of capitalism, small business in particular, and quality of life. So Democrats need to be on the cutting edge of today's cutting edge issues. Perhaps I should talk about statewide organization and membership quickly, because I understand that at least pre-RETA, there were only at the most 4 out of 64 parishes that had any sort of organization in terms of local chapters. This is significant. And I do not think that people particularly want to go to physical meetings. Media, the world of media and the world of communication is changing by the month, evidently, but we certainly need to organize as a state once we understand who we are, and that's where I'm going to go, is with content. But we must, as a state party, identify a few shared issues and run with them. In other words, Democrats have a wide range of philosophical viewpoints, and they must find the points upon which they share, instead of arguing about the fringe, the radical elements of which we do not share. Because in this point in history, the voter, if we're interested in winning, if we're not interested in winning, if we're simply interested in identifying issues and letting someone else win, then we can debate all we want. But if we want to win, we have to identify commonalities. And the commonalities I want to address are the 3 E's and the 3 H's. Plus, I suppose, a bit about civil rights. But the 3 E's would be education, environment, and the economy. And the 3 H's are health, highways, and homeland security. And in terms of education, I think we need to look at the facts, look at who we are, and not try to be who we are not. We need to seize the day. The trend in the state is toward technical trade schools. There's a revamping of the technical trade school system. The Democratic Party needs to be at that table, needs to be aware of it. 1 out of 3 of our children is not graduating from high school. 1 out of 3 is entering college and not graduating from college. That is a fact. There are issues of opportunity, but you need to have deep knowledge to question these. Why is every secondary teacher I know, why does everyone, whom I know, dislike No Child Left Behind? What's there? Is there some way where the state of Louisiana can tweak it so that it's more palatable for the teacher who is groaning under this burden. We need to, in terms of environment, this is a tremendous issue. I've spent a great deal of time. I'm on the state board of the Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana. That's CRCL, our primary policy group since 1987 that goes to Washington, D.C. And they also are quiet, stationed in Baton Rouge with their policy advocacy group. We are it. And just yesterday, 2 days ago, the CIAP was released. That's the Coastal Impact Assistance Program. There will be hearings. One in Lake Charles on the 26th and one in Abbeville on March 1st. It's most important that we have feedback from Southwest Louisiana. CIAP will bring us $570 million over 3 years. The CPRA is the group that's newly formed to oversee the state's master plan and all of the Outer Continental Shelf funds. There's almost no planning for Southwest Louisiana. There is almost no one at the table from Southwest Louisiana, and I mean from Vermilion Parish West. Region 4 is Vermilion, Cameron, and Calcasieu. We need to go to Baton Rouge. We need to be at the table at every meeting. I'm not sure if people realize that the eastern borders of Calcasieu Lake, the levees, have not been repaired. That prevented Lake Charles from getting feet more of water during Rita. Is anyone asking these questions? I do not think they are. And I think there's the time for thinking about it and thinking that other people are advocating the needs of Southwest Louisiana are past. We have to address the locks on the intercoastal waterway. They prevent water surges. The levees that are being proposed below Lake Charles are bowl-like, but we have great floods coming from the north. We had 2 500-year floods this fall, and such bowls need to be questioned and perhaps shoved southward to the border of the intercoastal waterway. These are significant questions. We have an aggressive buildup of LNG plants onshore in Southwest Louisiana. Southeast Louisiana is not even aware of them, and the dialogue is all about Southeast Louisiana. We hope that WRDA on a federal level will be funded. It has not been funded since 2004, and it has the LCA, our master plan, in it, pared down from $14 billion to $1.2 billion, and only has 5 projects, all Southeast Louisiana. WRDA is the Water Resources Defense Authority Act, and we need that to be not only authorized but appropriated. And these are grindingly important. We perhaps need locks at the base of the Calcasieu and the Sabine rivers. When I talk about the environment, this is our economy. We're number 1 and number 2 in the nation of oil and gas import running through our surface and through our pipelines. And if we were a separate country, such as a Kuwait, I do think that we would be receiving significant, there would be interest. I do think that Southwest Louisiana really, though, needs to go to bat in a way that it hasn't before. We're accustomed to saying we're here and they're there. And in fact, we're more closely related to a very dynamic economy, which is Houston. Extraordinary. But we just simply need to go to bat on the coast, on technical education, and on the future drift of building an I-10 economic corridor. And I do want to say to the Lafayette listeners that they did not suffer through Audrey or Rita. And a small hurricane does not give you an inkling of what a great hurricane is. It simply doesn't. It is a traumatizing experience, and I do hope that Lafayette joins with Lake Charles in vigorously, with Abbeville and everyone in Vermilion Parish, vigorously taking our arguments and our needs. We need to fight for the Mermentau Basin. The Mermentau Basin is a great key to freshwater flows. And other than a few scientists, engineers, and farmers, this argument is not being heard. And we're a salvageable part of the state. Yeah, and there are other things. So much else.
That's great.
With global warming coming, it's anticipated that Calcasieu and Cameron are going to go very dry, that the great Chico Aquifer, which is under Eunice, Crowley, and so forth, is going to become much smaller, and there will be more saltwater intrusion. These are significant issues. And global climate change will cause, Louisiana will be one of the earliest areas noticeably impacted. But we need to advocate, and I don't mean Louisiana, I mean Southwest Louisiana. Because I went to a meeting at CRCL and I was the only representative west of Baton Rouge. I, a civilian. And there were 30 people at the table. On terms of the economy, I think we need to choose where our battles are. Our battles cannot be everywhere. We're a rather illiterate state, lowly educated, and I think we need to throw our ammo with the technical education. And as I said, there is a huge reworking of technical education, and we need to work with our school system. That is such a subject. The public school systems. I'm not sure we're putting out adequate workforce there. And the Democratic Party needs to ask hard questions. We have a huge industry, multi-billion industry in commercial fishing. We have a multi-billion industry in recreational fishing. And not only that, but our wetlands are the nursery for all of the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf is twice as productive as the Atlantic and Pacific. But the wetlands are in Louisiana, period. So Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida benefit from our wetlands. And for the Democratic Party not to be simply at every table on that part of the economy, not even oil and gas, but the fisheries, is most significant. The commercial and the recreational fishermen are at odds. They work against each other. And so this is, once again, an example of fighting Trojan wars. They need to come together on their essential commonalities and fight. And the Democratic Party needs to be, perhaps, sponsoring Camp David Accords between the two industries. There are opportunities here at every turn. So, in terms of secondary education, I think we need to look for niches and go for them in terms of hydrology, energy, aquaculture, culture and tourism. And also, there is an old battle between the private and the public universities in Louisiana. I am a Tulane graduate, and I have lived in California. I would not imagine that California would turn its nose to Stanford, USC, or Caltech. Massachusetts would not ignore Harvard or MIT. Louisiana needs to pull together, and I know they are in healthcare, but pull together in all facets and honor our strengths rather than emphasize our differences and worry about elite education when, in fact, there are opportunities for the low-income person to get an education. In terms of health, I think I've addressed that. We do have a charity system. We have a huge amount of attention being thrown on our state by Levitt at the federal level to get us to work hard. And we have a Region 5 board, I've noticed, that's working over here. But the legislature has just taken money from the LRA, 3 to 4 times the money that the LRA thought to throw it to the LSU Charity Hospital rebuilding in New Orleans. The Democratic Party needs to be in the heart of all of that dialogue on our public health system, which is unique in the nation. I do hope we are. In terms of highways, the highway maintenance, evidently there was a recent rule on the 16 cents per gallon vote. Now, are we properly husbanding that funding? Because we have to provide matching funding. There is not bedrock under this part of the state, and 60 to 70% of the state lives in this part of the state. And that is where the transportation for the oil and gas industry is in this part of the state. And so we are, A, not maintaining our roads, but B, we do not have bedrock under our roads. And C, do we not need to have forceful politicians and parties who say, re-examine the funding sources and allocations. Now, Homeland Security, every Democrat here should be worried about security. And just one example, first of all, if your nation is not safe from attack, then all the issues go away. We were the leaders in World War I. We were the leaders in World War II. We were the leaders in Korea. We were the leaders in Vietnam. We've not shied away. We've not shied away from valid and invalid wars. Why now? Why the lack of debate, of dialogue? Why the lack? So, let me tell you this, specifically 5 of the 15 largest ports in the United States per tonnage are in Louisiana, and there are hundreds of ports in this country. We have 5 of the 15. Next to us, Beaumont is number 4. Right past Beaumont is Houston, and beyond that is Corpus. We have competitors, but we need Homeland Security. The Democratic Party needs to be asking significant questions These are apparently, that is to appearance, minor ports, perhaps smaller than Long Beach, LA, Houston, and New York. They are not. When you're running, you're the number one state in the union in a very small state with oil and gas, you have issues on security. And that is an opportunity. Now, in terms of civil rights, I think that with the baby boomer generation coming on and the aging population looking for places to live that are affordable, I know that communities such as Welsh are positioning themselves to be senior citizen communities. And there are parts of Lake Charles that are going to be in the next 10 years doing that. I'm sure Lafayette will be experiencing the same. But you will have many, many unmarried citizens living together. And we need to review and critique our laws carefully to make sure that we will have utilitarian value there for the unmarried people living together so that they can support each other financially, so that they can have hospital visitation rights, so that these serious and significant responsibilities will not be thrown on the state, so that you can have unnecessary government intrusion, which I know we're all interested in. Well, the thing that the nation needs is diversity. What makes a nation strong is the ability to discuss things that we simply despise. We are not to be a country of yes men and yes women. We were not founded by that type of person. And we need radio of all sorts to speak to all people. Therefore, we need to be able to fight for the right for fundamentalist Christians to have access to the radio waves. We need to fight for the right for conservatives to have the access to the radio waves. And we need to fight for the right for public radio to be on our airwaves, which I have to say is 75% not funded by the government as a rule. And what public radio does, most people in the nation want access to the news. And the ideal of public radio is to provide listeners with both sides of an argument. And often you will hear that the public radio is liberal on the news. Well, that, to me, in my little world of analysis, means that we provided the other side as well, instead of just your side. Secondly, in terms of culture, there are many forms of culture which are not in the top 5 or top 100 right now. They're not commercially, hip. But they are great cultural icons, things of great value. And public radio celebrates them, and there are perfect examples here. 2 would be the blues and the jazz. And those are Louisiana and Mississippi, of course, inventions, so to speak. But they are not commercially successful. And in fact, there is more and more difficulty around the nation having venues for jazz, which ironically is very popular in schools. And so public radio provides a voice to cultural icons in terms of, which are not going to make the commercial airwaves. So that right there are 2 reasons that I would fight for public radio. That's one reason I'm supportive of public radio. I'm supportive of Pacifica Radio, and I'm supportive of small, local, independent radio and TV. Because yes, we need to be free. I think, corporate support. I do think the chief probably issue in our country right now is the influence of the lobbyist. And I think, if we were all to throw our arms and our money and our energy to one fight, it would be to address the issue of the lobbyist, which is so closely related to the corporation owning the content, basically, ultimately, of the newsroom. And yes, and this throws a great responsibility on the newsroom of public radio, which of course was just so benefited recently by the late Mrs. Kroc, who just endowed them. That to be independent, impartial, nonpartisan, and thorough in the news. And that same goes for public television. And that argument is one that needs to be perhaps restated in the minds of our politicians on the federal level, so that they can become eloquent defenders of public radio and public television. I mean, it is to the point that actually the public owns the airwaves and not the corporations, so that I think that deeper argument should happen in my lifetime, because they are we are having to pay for our own airwaves. Downtown Lake Charles is been blessed with being one of the 3 sites chosen by Dwani, the international planning firm hired by the governors of Mississippi and Louisiana, DPZ firm, to experience extreme renovation as a result or as an outgrowth of Rita. And what's interesting about downtown is, to me, it is the only part of Lake Charles where the races meet. There is not the segregation. There is the cross-fertilization of people of Lake Charles. It also has the cultural history, so that of the buildings remaining, you can look at a building which was standing there when your great-grandparents were living here, and of architectural history. It is a place which is on a lake, which is one of the few places in the United States that has a lake by an interstate, and is potentially a cultural destination. Now, right now it is for eco-tourists going south to Cameron, but we're looking forward to major lakeshore changes which will keep public access. Access to their own lake is key to our mentality over here. We have adopted SMART Code, which is innovative for the nation, so that we have architectural, landscape, parking, and other amenities in an attempt to balance public access with private development opportunities. And so that we have been having interesting dialogue in that way, and switches in thinking in the direction of planning. My name is Carolyn Woosley, and I am a Democrat because I do believe that everyone should have opportunity in America to live life to the fullest. And I do believe in a party that dares on occasion to ask hard questions of those who are perhaps not being given every shot at life's opportunities. And the negative I will say is, it appears to me the Republican Party now is focused on a philosophy of greed and of not realizing their own contradictions in terms of growing government. I'm interested in a Democratic Party can ask fiscally difficult questions that, ironically, can be actually a fiscally responsible party. And because I am a financial planner, I do believe in fiscal conservatism to some extent. But I do believe that we can share our wealth, those of us at the top. There's no harm done.
Thank you so much, Carolyn, for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down and talk with us. We hope that we know that everyone watching tonight enjoyed that interview. We definitely thank you. But regretfully, that's all the time that we have for tonight. We want to remind you, Blue Mondays is on each and every Monday night here on AOC Channel 15 at 9 p.m. We hope that you not only tune in and watch us every week and make us a part of your week, but also tell your friends about us. We hope that they will enjoy the show as much as we hope you do as well. Tomorrow morning, the Left blog, you can click on over to the Daily Advertiser's website. That should be up and running shortly after 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, so definitely a good read for you there. With that, this has been another week of Blue Mondays. We thank you for spending part of your evening with us, and we hope that you'll join us again next week.
Respect. One of the simplest ways of showing it is by simply returning a person's phone call. At the Glen Armentor Law Corporation, we not only return every call, we also take whatever time is necessary to make sure you completely understand your personal injury case and what it will take to win it. The Glen Armentor Law Corporation, where a fair settlement is no accident.